This video covers concepts to consider when developing and evaluating data visualizations, common issues with the presentation of data, and best practices for design. Today, we'll talk generally about data visualization, steps toward creating visualizations, and the role of rhetoric and the idea of objectivity. There are commonly cited historical examples of data visualization that are often discussed, such as the cholera map of John Snow, but we'll focus on the current leading thoughts around data visualization. As data visualization as a practice has increased greatly with the increased use of computers and data collection, a resultant wealth of data visualization experts, thought leaders, and gurus have sprung up in contemporary times. Edward Tufte, Stephanie Evergreen, Andy Kirk, Cole Nussbaum-Knaflic, and Alberto Cairo, to name a few. To start with, what is data visualization? A simple definition is anything that converts data sources into a visual representation, including charts, graphs, and maps. Data visualization is a rhetorical device, a tool to express and support an argument. Visualizing data entails many decisions, and the decisions we make are shaped by ethical and rhetorical concerns as well as clarity. Why are data visualizations useful? Well, one of the two main reasons is to see patterns, like the patterns in Anscombe's quartet, whose 4 datasets have almost identical summary statistics for the x and y variables, mean, variance, correlation, linear regression, etc., but the differences are vast once visualized. It's also easier to see patterns in large datasets once they have been visualized because we're able to compress the data into a smaller space. Data preparation and cleaning is its own world of tasks and often take the most time. Many data viz tools use tidy data, but Excel is an exception. Data exploration using visualization is also part of preparing for analysis as well. As you are becoming aware, the common issues include, but are not limited to, data being structured to be displayed or for data entry, wide data, empty rows, merged cells, bad formatting and documentation, missing data left unexplained, extra variables which are cumbersome or slow to your processing or crash your machine, typos, wrong information, no metadata rules, NYC and New York, discrepancies between tools, space and capitalization rules, dealing with 99 versus NA versus AA8 for nulls, and the big one, dates. If you recall, I mentioned the first reason for data visualization. So the second reason for data visualization is to tell a story. You can see here that for this digital humanities project, this visualization took 35 hours of work, while the preparation took almost 260 hours. This visualization quickly tells the story of a long research process in one visual. Although the bulk of time is spent in data prep, visualizations do still take time and effort, as do all forms of communication. They also have varied purposes. Let's look at those next. So, there are several intended impacts of visualizations. First, we will contrast those created for exploration and those created for explanation. With data exploration, the goal is to provide as much information, and there may or may not be a clear upfront message. With data explanation, a visualization provides a simple summary with elements often averaged, summed, or otherwise simplified to show a trend, outlier, or other finding within the data. As we see with this exploration, the viewer does the work. This is an interactive visualization of Tour de France toughness elements. Rather than having one large overarching message, the viewer is expected to highlight and click on different elements to get information. In this case, the viewer is expected to see what elements are there and craft and investigate their own questions. Here's an example of data explanation. The visualization shows the deaths per week due to flu in blue and COVID-19 in red. The focus is on delivering a quick view of how high and wide spikes and deaths are in order to compare across each year. With data explanation, the visuals tend to be more simplistic as they are delivering a message. There typically aren't many additional questions that can be asked and answered by the visualization. One can quickly see how the highest spike occurred at a point in 2017, but outside of those elements, they wouldn't be able to drill down and ask more things. Visualizations also serve other roles in our culture: to wow and amaze, and to serve as a form of expression. This example is a design called warming stripes, where Edward Hawkins displayed the effect of climate change on global temperatures rising from 1850 to 2018. These warming stripes are now a popular design for scarves, pants, and other accessories and items. Visualizations can often elicit emotion, and, like the rest of what we create, exist within the context of our world. The colors we use, the slopes of our graphs, and the associated images help solidify a message for the viewer almost instantly. Of course, multiple elements can exist in one visualization. A visualization can explain by showing a trend while still offering elements for further exploration, and they can elicit emotion or be seen as art, as proven by Hawkins' warming stripes design. This presentation is focused on data visualization in terms of creating charts and figures for presentation, rather than for exploration, as you may do to better understand your own data. So we're thinking about presenting our findings to others. We will, of course, talk about ways to avoid being misleading, but data visualization, when used for communication, is inherently a rhetorical act where our goal is inherently to present and persuade our audience of something. So, there are ethical elements to discuss as well. When you present visualizations, you are saying, "I am reliable. I have done the research, and these are the facts." You should believe these facts as they are coupled with the visualization to support the argument. So let's get into best practices. There are a ton of ways to visualize a small amount of data. Making charts entails decisions around what to highlight, where to draw attention, when to smooth, when to show detail. These decisions are done essentially to provide information to others, and the goal is typically to support the point we are making. All the visualizations in this next segment are from 3 variables: county name, year, and count. First, let's start with the trusty old bar chart. Column and bar charts show category variable values. The 2 variables involved are a numerical variable and a categorical variable. Bar charts are also great at showing negative numbers. For bar charts, the best practices are to use 1 color per variable. So, unless there is a clustered bar chart, you only need 1 color for all the bars. Bar charts must always start at 0 since it is filled in area which indicates the value of each bar and how big they are in relation to one another. Also, the bars should be sorted by size if there are no order to the categories. If there is an order to categories, let's say letter grades in a class, then keeping that order makes sense. Turn the visualization sideways as pictured. If there are either too many bars, usually more than 5, or the text cannot fit, you should not turn the text sideways, as this means people will need to turn their heads to read. Line charts are another common type of visualization, and these show a trend. For line charts, the 2 variables displayed are a chronological variable and a numerical variable. The most important part of this visualization is being able to see how big or small the slope is in the line. For this reason, it's best to use solid lines only and avoid more than 4 lines on one chart. With too many lines, it becomes impossible to see trends in the data. For line charts, they do not have to start at 0. A rule of thumb is that they should take up roughly 2/3 of chart height. Similarly, Francis Gagnon, founder of Voila, an information design firm based in Montreal, Canada, said to aim for leaving at least 33% of the plot area free under a line chart that doesn't start at 0. But It is really more important that they display the trend accurately. For example, for GPA, a change from 2.5 to 3.0 is only a 0.5 difference, but it is a sizable shift in one's GPA and should be visualized as such. Scatter plots are used for showing a relationship between two numerical variables. These are also great for getting familiar with one's own data to see where all the points fall. For scatter plots used for explanation visualizations, use color, distinctions, and callouts to guide to where to look. If you are showing or implying there is a trend, it is my personal belief that an R-squared value should be displayed along with any scatter plot, particularly if there is a trend line displayed. The R-squared value simply tells how strong the correlation is on a scale from -1 to 1, with 0 meaning there is no relationship. The human eye is very bad at telling how well the dots line up, as you can test for yourself with the Guess the Correlation game at guessthecorrelation.com. Pie charts are the unloved visualization in the data visualization world, with many experts saying they should never be used. However, they do have a place. Pie charts show a relationship to the whole with the slices adding up to 100% of something. The of something is extremely important here because just because a bunch of percentages add up to 100% does not mean they come from the same pie. Pie charts are best used to display one large or small category. Don't use them if there are too many categories, more than 4, because it begins to be difficult to gauge these proportions between slices. Also, to again do the work for the viewer, you should order slices according to size. There are many other types of visualizations, but they build on the principles I just outlined. For example, the 100% stacked bar chart is basically a deconstructed pie chart, so the categories should add up to 100% of something. But it's also placed next to several other bars to show differences in proportion. So like the basic bar chart, it should still start at 0. Some other general principles are to spell it out. Make your point clear by adding text stating your point. Sort anything you can. Use colors that immediately signify your point, like green for money, and use visual cues such as hue, shape, alignment, and size. Avoid clutter if possible, like legends and grid lines if you can directly label the data points, particularly for bar charts. If decimals or precise numbers make things more confusing, round the numbers to make them more easy to consume. Try to summarize, typically by summing or averaging the comparison data that are not the main focus of your visualization. This helps reduce the number of lines, bars, chunks, or other features that people are attempting to compare all at once. In this case, the attempt was to show how pandemic influenza average epidemic curves patterns shifted in circulation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Pause here for a few minutes to think about better ways to show this information based on the intended message. There are several ideas that would likely work better. Simply comparing the average pre-pandemic as one line and the years of the pandemic as the only other line is an option. You can also break out these data points into separate charts, grouped together in order to see comparison points more clearly. Just make sure that each chart's X and Y axes are on the same scale. As we discuss general principles, don't forget to leave out embellishments that do not add to the visual. Avoid distortion of lines and shapes, including 3D charts and tilting text. 3D creates more false hierarchies. Foreground graphics appear larger, background graphics appear smaller, and the relationship between data series is needlessly skewed. So while 3D graphics are engaging, they hold the potential to obstruct important information and confuse scale relationships between data series. Now, the decisions you make are not set in stone as to the perfect visualization for your data. There are still plenty of decisions that you make based upon what you know and what you are trying to best communicate accurately. These two charts were selected from an article written by a Dana journalist from The Economist. In the article, they were self-critiquing their own visualizations. In this example, the left chart was what was originally published, and they went back and tested new ways that it could have been improved. It shows whether people felt the outcome of the EU referendum was the right or wrong choice, i.e., Brexit remorse or Bremorse. Originally, the line chart includes every individual point representing the average for the response by date of data collection. With their adaptations, they decided to switch to a line of best fit. Their rationale for this was that the original visualization makes it appear as if respondents had a rather erratic view, with opinions moving across percentage points from one week to the next. They also added more space at the bottom of the chart to abide by Gagnon's 30% rule. Were those good decisions? Did this help the viz? I'd like you to pause this and take some notes of the strengths and weaknesses of both visualizations. Okay, let's talk about how can we critically explore data visualizations and other ways they can be flawed. There's a tendency to wield data visualizations as irrefutable evidence. We have the data, this is what it means, end of story. Yet, the great scientific minds of the 20th century were fond of uncertainty and embraced the fact that even the most convincing data is prone to bias and error. Data visualizations aren't truth claims. They're analytical snapshots fashioned in forms the human eye comprehends from imperfect captures using imperfect measures of collection and analysis. Data visualization is inherently an act of interpretation. Along with interpretation comes selection, grouping, emphasis, and other elements of abstraction and summarization. This visualization shows the impact of gun violence on cutting lives short in the United States. As you view, ask yourself, how are these lifespans estimated? What are the inherent biases in these estimations? On the other hand, how do these estimations show the impact of gun violence? How does the simplification of life reduce down individuals? Consider quality of life. Now let's also return to this bar chart from earlier so we can think about choices and deception. Let's say this bar chart was included in a state health department report looking at the effectiveness of counties' prevention strategies. What are some good qualities of this bar chart? What is the major issue with it? Feel free to pause and think about it. Now that you're back, I'll talk about a purposeful mistake I made in this design. As you can see, these are raw pertussis cases in California counties deemed as the top 10. But is it fair to compare raw numbers for counties that vary widely in size and population? Let's look at potential improvements. Here's our first bar chart at the top. Here, we create the same visualization looking at numbers that are fair to compare across counties, such as the rate of cases. Notice the top 10 list changes a lot. We could also compare apples to apples by only comparing highly populated counties to one another, since there may be an impact in spreading due to crowding, making crowding a confounding variable across counties. I think it is safe to argue that none of these is perfect, and all introduce some elements of unfairness, although we know that most people view data visualizations as truth, which is why it is so easy to mislead with data. This issue is spread across all types of visualizations. Maps are not immune. For example, land is not people. So we see the same issues arise even with the same data mapped. In addition, certain data concepts extend to visualizations. A small percent of a big number is big, and a big percentage of a small number is small. Percents make better sense for bigger numbers. Providing context through statistical significance, R-squared values, etc., all help to clarify what is being visualized. And sharing the data openly helps clarify further. We can also critique what we just learned. The big names in data visualization encourage reduction of visual load, which refers to text, color, and image on the visualizations that do not add to the main message, which is helpful. You can see this taken to the extreme in this example, going from the bars with section separators and y-axis 0-point line on the left to simplistic lines on the right. However, there has been some research into these ideas, and there hasn't been a clear advantage one way or another. There are many confounding factors, such as people being more familiar with these forbidden elements, such as pie charts and 3D design. In addition, meaningful maximalist types of visualizations by designers like Nigel Holmes, see the left graphic, have been shown to add memorability without reducing interpretation accuracy in comparison with a more simple graphic like what is shown on the right. These results and impacts vary drastically across target audiences and method of use. So, again, while learning these best practices is useful, it is still up to the unique scenario in which you decide the path forward that makes most sense for your visualizations. An ethical approach to data visualization is going to always be more complex than simply avoiding deception or presenting information clearly and honestly, because honesty and complexity involve multifarious considerations in and of themselves. And to that end, visualizing data is going to entail decisions grounded in ethical considerations of when and how most honesty and complexity are called for in your visualizations. To recap, consider each step of the process of getting the data to the point of visualization. Be clear about areas of uncertainty and error. Missing, inaccurate, and dirty data, trash in, trash out, are common issues when creating visualizations, so making sure to communicate these elements is crucial. What we haven't talked much about is how this is also inclusive. To extend this work, create multiple versions of the same visual, and utilize text blocks to complement your visual, which helps both people with and without vision issues. Be aware of the impact of terminology and language. Use person-centered language and consider the impact that your results have on groups, particularly marginalized populations. What assumptions are you making about these groups? What stereotypes are being reinforced? In what ways are colors and language being used to simplify groups' existence? What is the purpose of your viz? Does it only exist to further stigmatize groups? There are lots of questions to ask as you go forth and create visualizations, but hopefully this presentation has given you the potential places to start. Here are some helpful tools to utilize when creating data visualizations. Thank you for watching.